I should probably discuss exactly what we're going to be doing today. Even if, title, thumbnail. But I still feel like I should still elaborate further on the concept exactly. We are going to be reviewing every episode of The Mars Show. But in this video, we'll only be doing Season 1. So, this might take a little bit. So, I suggest we get started right now. Morning Madness. Here we are, at the very beginning. This is where it all started. But that does mean I'm going to have to be a little bit nicer to it while I'm reviewing it. 3 or 4 gags, Mars runs in a straight line for a minute. It does a great job setting a tone, but what it fails to do is set the tone. Basically, where I'm going with this is that it sets a very pleasant, comfortable atmosphere, almost like a comedy show. Yeah, The Mars Show was originally supposed to be a comedy show rather than the action show it eventually grew into. But the tone it does set is great, even if the show slowly morphed into the more intense action-oriented setting after the halfway point. Yeah, totally a mixed episode. Saturn and Earth. At this point, the peaceful atmosphere is starting to wear thin. Sheesh, and it's only the second episode. But this episode is so plain, flat, and simple that I can recount everything that takes place in this episode, interesting or not, off the top of my head. Saturn walks to my house and takes like 10 seconds to eat all my cookies. Earth walks to Pluto and insults his quote-unquote horns. And then Saturn falls on them. Pluto stumbles up before coming up with his master plan, and then they all go to sleep. That's it. Though it is my least favorite, it's probably not the worst episode of Season 1, but I think we can all agree it is a soggy episode. Raspberry Pi. This episode here has quite an avant-garde start, choosing a trippy commercial joke, which is actually much funnier now than it was back when it came out, due to the fact that there are, actual mid-roll ads in the show later on. But other than that, it's just kind of boring. Sure, it foreshadows Pluto's evil intentions a little bit, but it is very much a soggy episode. Meow Mystics. See how I said there was the initial peace arc or something like that up in the top left corner? Well, just so you know, it changed to the Meow Mystics arc. Despite what it may initially look like, we aren't quite finished with the lamer parts of Season 1. But still progress. But this is actually a really good start, a flicker of hope even if all the build-up of our cravings for action aren't quite satisfied in the slightest. But the Meow Mystics are kind of important for a good chunk of the season here. I mean, this is Earth's favorite episode, so it must be good, right? Well, the episode kind of fails to show us around the city due to time constraints. It's still definitely a fun time, though. Despite being a mixed episode, it's still definitely on the high end of the spectrum, no questions asked. The Blackout. Oh boy, this episode. As you can tell, its visuals are, not good. Seriously, there's zero art in it whatsoever. Mostly just black with white spots and some eyes. And worse yet, right as it looks like something is about to happen, it just flashes, some noise, and suddenly only Earth remains. And honestly, it just feels like the plot was just an excuse to not animate much. So yeah, this is very clearly a soggy episode. No denying that this right here is a low point of the season, and possibly the show as a whole, but that might be a bit too big of a claim. The Slammer. Overall, I'd say this is a pretty soft, soggy episode, but still soggy nonetheless. Why? It's just kind of lame. It starts off parodying Ace Attorney, but then it just turns into a 2-minute jailbreak scene. It's even worse when you realize that this means them being put in jail in the first place meant absolutely nothing. But I would like to note the weird black goop monster chilling on the security camera, since that thing alludes to something that hasn't been revealed yet, so I can't say it on camera. But I'll reassure you that it will be important. Trivial Treasure Hunters. Well, we've been on a pretty soggy streak so far, but that changes right here, because this is a sparkly episode! Our very first. Took long enough. Despite the rocky start, this episode definitely makes up for all of it in just 3 minutes. Its beginning is highly reminiscent of Morning Madness, with tons of gags, all balanced out with the dangers permeating through the erosion of the camaraderie that Mars and Saturn never really had in the first place in the show, along with sailing out in the nigh endless ocean, or probably nigh endless, I don't know, it's not been explored much. Combined with the plot twist of Pluto working with the Meow mystics, this is basically the turning point of the series, where the Mars show redeems itself. Meow Maraud. At this point, we've been through a lot, but this episode brings back the nice, pleasant atmosphere of the earlier episodes, while also introducing the danger that I mentioned before of Pluto working with the Meow mystics. Ugh, tongue twister that is. Even capping off with the on-screen death of Lloyd. Definitely a big shocker if you can tell what's going on at that point of the episode. Despite all my praise, it still has its issues, like the thing I literally just mentioned, where the pacing's a bit too fast in the action, so you can't tell what's going on, accompanied by the slight boring feeling at the beginning, and some looping animations. So overall, I'd say it's a mixed episode. Iron Will. Mwah! Sparkly episode! No questions asked. It has an impeccable balance of comedy and action. How Meow actually gets a prominent role in this episode. It does a great job teaching how soul works, with it being controlled by emotions and all. Definitely a phenomenal start to the good part of Season 1. Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, the arc changed again, this time the Pluto arc. The First Frost. This episode is a rather mediocre follow-up to the absolute beast that was Iron Will, but I feel it would be unfair to judge it to that standard. Thusly, we'll instead compare it to Morning Madness, as I feel that would be more even. In that regard, it's the exact opposite, entirely action. So it's better than Morning Madness, but I'd rather be burnt out, which I wouldn't do to it being only like 5 minutes. But I'd rather that than be bored. So I'd say it's better, but not by enough to make it not a mixed episode. R080T5. This episode could have been great. It just had so much potential, but it was all wasted because of one single, brutally simple flaw. Due to the episode being totally rushed, the voices sound exactly the same, but that was by design, so instead I should have made the camera angle change depending on who's talking. But my hasty past self thought that would be more quote-unquote efficient if I just kept a single still image on screen for 30 seconds straight. What a soggy episode. It could have been such a sparkly, shiny episode, but it was instead totally squandered by my rushed laziness. Ugh. Sadness. Tower of Terror. The penultimate. That's all this is. That's all it was. That's all it'll ever be. Eternally stuck in its successor's shadow. The definition of a mixed episode. Seriously, at the beginning, we have to watch me talk to R080T5 for the third time. Nothing to see here. Moving on to the Final Confrontation. Here we are. The end. The curtain call. The fat lady's song. I don't know why that's a phrase, but it is. Anyway, this is a certified sparkly episode! Like, seriously, I feel like it would be rather lame and feel wrong if we ended on a sour note. Even more so if it was just unnotably mediocre. Which is why I was so glad to hear how sparkly and shiny this episode turned out to be. No comedy, but it's a season finale, so higher stakes are to be expected. Pluto's domination is pretty scary at first. Earth basically calls the plot out on it, and how many a speech from back in Iron Will starts to come into use when Earth goes super for the first time. I figured I'd have someone other than the main character be the first to go super to deflect your expectations. Is it as good as the aforementioned Iron Will? Not quite, but it's still a great way to end off the season. Alright, we have all of our data. Now it's time to crunch some numbers. Starting off, we have 5 soggy episodes, 5 mixed episodes, and 3 sparkly episodes. Sure, the sparklies might be a bit sparse, but the rarity is what makes every masterpiece special, right? Really, I'd say it's mostly soggy if you're judging by everything before the Pluto arc, and mixed if you're judging by everything after. Since it's a tie, I'm gonna have to go with... Psych! We're doing a ranking. From worst to best, the list is as follows. Number 13, The Blackout. Number 12, Saturn and Earth. Number 11, Raspberry Pi. Number 10, R0025. Number 9, The Slammer. Number 8, Tower of Terror. Number 7, Meow Meow Maraud. I almost said Mystics. Number 6, The First Frost. Number 5, Morning Madness. Number 4, Meow Meow Mystics. Number 3, Trivial Treasure Hunters. Number 2, the Final Confrontation. And number 1, Iron Will. Here's the rankings for the initial Peace arc. As you can see, it's definitely very awful, except for Morning Madness, which is actually pretty okay. The Meow Meow Mystics arc, which is, okay, meh, kinda, bleh. And the Pluto arc, which is definitely better. Alright, that's enough stalling. For the overall season rating, I'm gonna have to go with it being a mixed season. Yeah, despite it sounding kind of inconclusive, I was just torn between soggy and mixed. If you disagree with any of my opinions stated in the video, then good for you, I guess. So yeah, season 2 should come out, I don't know, like 11 months ago. I made a series called Mars Kart, and I said the next part should come out anytime. And it's been like almost a year and still nothing. So, no promises, but chances, there's always a chance. Because, I mean, it could be kind of weird if I just did season 1 and nothing else. Bye.